7 de la mañana, 35 minutos, 7:35. Importante en Estados Unidos, acaba de hablar la vicepresidenta Kamala Harris. Aseguró que si Rusia invade a Ucrania, Estados Unidos va a tener que actuar inmediatamente. Tiara Mateus, ¿qué más dijo la vicepresidenta?
La vicepresidenta Kamala Harris ha respaldado al presidente Joe Biden, ha sido muy clara en advertir que si Rusia invade a Ucrania, Estados Unidos va a actuar de inmediato y las consecuencias, por lo tanto, serán muy serias. Así lo aseguró hace algunos minutos.
On the subject of Ukraine, I will tell you that the president has been very clear, and we as the United States are very clear. If Putin takes aggressive action, we are prepared to levy serious and severe costs. Period. And I will tell you.
Aseguró la vicepresidenta Kamala Harris que el presidente Biden ha sido muy claro en que si Vladimir Putin toma medidas agresivas, Estados Unidos está preparado para imponer costos serios y severos, y fue muy enfática al asegurarlo. Por otra parte, también el Departamento de Estado dio a conocer que Estados Unidos aprobó las solicitudes de países como Estonia, Letonia y Lituania para enviar armas de fabricación estadounidense a Ucrania ante la posibilidad de esa invasión. Se aclara que Estados Unidos no tiene planeado enviar tropas a Ucrania, pero sí está buscando reforzar su apoyo para evitar que ante una eventual invasión de Rusia, el desenlace no sea tan rápido ni tan fácil.
7:36. Saludamos a esta hora al doctor Aaron Kall. Él es analista político, director de debates de la Universidad de Michigan, autor del libro I Do Solemnly Swear. Es un experto en política estadounidense. Vamos a hablar del tema porque hoy el presidente Joe Biden cumple un año frente a la Casa Blanca. Mr. Kall, thank you very much for having the time to talk to us. Good morning.
Good morning. It's nice to be back with you.
Quiero preguntarle si él considera que las críticas que le están haciendo al presidente Biden, si su popularidad se ajusta a lo que realmente está haciendo el presidente, a las labores del mandatario. Mr. Kall, again, thank you so much for having the time to talk to us and being again in our show. We would like to know what's your impression about the first year of President Joe Biden in the White House. Does it correspond with the numbers of popularity, the low numbers in his popularity? Is it a real reflection of what's going on in the country?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a mixed bag for the last year. It's hard to believe that it's already been a year. Clearly, he was elected to be sort of as a contrast to kind of the tumultuous time of President Trump, and so in some ways things have gotten a little bit easier on that front, and the country's not worried about Aaron tweets every day, but there's been a lot of tensions and issues in the last month, and as you mentioned, his job approval ratings are just about as low as President Trump's were at this time, and President Trump had to navigate this very difficult pandemic for a year or so, and President Biden has had difficulty kind of getting that under control. The amount of cases and deaths and things have been at an all-time high right now. The economy has been difficult with supply chain issues, and inflation has really been trouble. And so, this speech yesterday was meant to mark the first year of his administration, but it's definitely been very uneven. And he tried to do a reset yesterday because the midterm elections are coming up in November, and if those elections were today, the Democrats would do very poorly and probably lose control of both the House and the Senate. So he's got a lot of work to do before November to try to save the Democratic Party and their control of Congress.
Bueno, es difícil creer que ha pasado un año desde que asumió la presidencia Joe Biden, y la idea de esta elección, la idea del electorado fue finalmente conseguir un contraste con lo que había sido el gobierno de Donald Trump. Es una realidad que ha sido un poco más fácil vivir en Estados Unidos en este momento. El país, por ejemplo, no está preocupado por trinos extraños, por tweets extraños a cualquier hora del día, pero también es una realidad que ha habido tensión. Los números de Joe Biden en este momento son tan bajos como los números que tenía Donald Trump. Trump navegó durante la pandemia durante un año y Biden también lleva un año haciéndolo, y le ha costado manejarla. En este momento estamos hablando de muchísimos casos y muchísimas muertes. En cuanto a la economía, la situación ha sido difícil, por ejemplo, por la inflación. El discurso que dio ayer para marcar el año y para hablar de lo que ha sucedido, básicamente lo que busca es un punto de reset, un punto de volver a empezar. Porque en noviembre son las midterms, las elecciones de las midterms, y si las elecciones fueran hoy, los demócratas definitivamente perderían el control del Senado. Por lo tanto, hay mucho trabajo para hacer.
Señor Kall, buenos días. El presidente Biden aceptó que hay mucha frustración de los estadounidenses por el aumento de la inflación y el avance del COVID. Según su opinión, ¿en qué ha fallado el gobierno frente a estos dos temas?
Professor Kall, yesterday, President Biden gave a very long press conference. It was around 2 hours long, and he admitted that there's a lot of frustration among Americans because of inflation and COVID. What do you think has been his greatest error assessing those two very important issues in American life?
Yeah, I think that some of the top level numbers of the economy have been good, and kind of taking that macro view, certainly that's not spilling down to the average American. And so job creation, he's done a pretty good job. We lost many jobs during the pandemic, and he's created millions of new jobs in his first year as president. The unemployment rate is down to about 3.9%. Wages have increased a little bit because it's so competitive for jobs. While the minimum wage hasn't increased, just it kind of de facto has. The people are making now, at the low end about $15 or $16, and the stock market has increased. Hasn't done well in the last a few weeks, but overall, the first year that's gone up, kind of exponentially, and so there have been a lot of economic gains in his administration, and while the pandemic is still not totally under control, there's obviously the progression of vaccines and therapeutics and things like that have kind of made it a little bit more manageable. But the improvements that have happened, at the macro level, they haven't really kind of trickled down to everyone, and just these with inflation, even if people are making more money and more people are employed, the increase in the prices of goods have kind of overwhelmed some of those benefits that have come, and so there's big supply shortages. The cost of things like gas and cars, hotels, plane tickets, things like that have really increased, and so sometimes when you're the president and you're in the White House, you don't see some of the daily challenges that the Americans are facing in their lives, and so a lot of the improvements that you've made, you can kind of see them at the top level, but everyday Americans don't, and they're just even if their wages are increasing a little bit, if they have a job, there's just so much economic anxiety that exists, and still, no matter what happens, he's got to do a better job with the pandemic, because everything really really kind of is going to be determined by that. And I think that the length of the press conference, kind of shows that he recognizes the challenges and is going to do his best for the next 3 years of his presidency to do better and try to address those things.
Bueno, hay que hablar de dos cosas. Por un lado, los números macroeconómicos no han sido para nada malos. Si tomamos las cosas con una visión macroeconómica, podemos ver que ha habido buena creación de empleos. Se perdieron muchos millones de empleos en la pandemia y con Biden se han creado empleos, además de que se han subido los salarios. En este momento estamos con una tasa de desempleo del 3.9% y el salario mínimo ha subido a 15 o 16 $16 la hora. La bolsa ha crecido, el stock market ha crecido. Estas semanas ha estado complicado, pero en términos generales sí ha estado bien. Ha habido ganancias económicas, si bien no se ha controlado del todo la pandemia, la situación, por ejemplo, con las vacunas es mucho mejor. Pero lo que es una realidad es que la macroeconomía no se siente a nivel individual. Por más de que haya más plata, por más de que los salarios sean más altos, por más de que haya más trabajo, no podemos no ver el alza de precios y que faltan cosas en el mercado. Eso hace que la gente no esté conforme. El presidente dentro de la Casa Blanca maneja los números de la macroeconomía, pero no está tan pendiente de lo que pasa a nivel individual con cada estadounidense. Y esa es la queja que hay en este momento, que si bien ha hecho un trabajo que está bien hecho, la gente a nivel individual no está tan conforme. Y ese fue el foco del discurso de ayer, que va a trabajar sobre eso.
Bueno, quiero preguntarle al señor Aaron Kall, que es analista político, director de debates de la Universidad de Michigan y autor del libro I Do Solemnly Swear, solemnemente juro, sobre el primer año de Biden. Si no será más bien que es un fenómeno mundial. La luna de miel se acaba, la gente termina quedando pues como descontenta con su presidente y eso le pasa a los presidentes en el mundo. Mr. Kall, don't you think what's going on, it's what happens all over the world? Honeymoon is over and people just are not very satisfied with their presidents when they're in office.
Yes, definitely. The honeymoon's over. You know, sometimes those last just a matter of months, and now obviously he's been in office over just a little bit over a year. But yeah, when he was elected, you know, there was a lot of concerns about, you know, kind of President Trump and what was happening. And Joe Biden, you know, he won the most votes ever. He defeated President Trump by about 8 million votes, and you know, won states like Georgia and Arizona that Democrats had not won in many years. And he, you know, said he was going to, you know, unify the country, and had obviously a lot of lofty goals and an administration and an agenda that he wanted to pass. Came in with an approval rating of, you know, close to 55-60%, which in, you know, these very divided times is very difficult. But yes, things in the past year haven't gone well politically, and you know, according to his job approval rating, there's a bunch of different polls, but you know, the lowest poll showed him with, you know, approval rating kind of in the 30s. Probably he has an average of an approval rating in the low 40s, and so that's declined significantly since he's been president, and it's been because the pandemic has proved very challenging. You know, almost being here for about 2 years, and you know, the different variants of the pandemic that he's had to deal with. Currently, there's, you know, about 1 million cases or so per day. Still 2,000 deaths per day, while the hospitalizations and things have declined. It's still something that he's really navigating, along with a lot of economic challenges, including inflation, the cost of goods and everything. So definitely the bloom is off the rose a little bit, and his job approval rating has declined. The good thing is that there's not any more elections for another 11 months, and so, you know, in politics there's always time for a turnaround. And so he's going to try to do some things, you know, maybe split up his Build Back Better agenda and try to pass some different portions of that. Maybe reform the Electoral Count Act. And so there's still time in the next several months before everyone totally pivots towards the midterms to get some additional agenda items done. And he also hopes that this variant passes and the virus and the pandemic ebbs a little bit, and that the economy increases while inflation may decrease a little bit. So he's hoping those macroeconomic numbers improve, and that he can have another turnaround and kind of experienced that political level where he was when he won the election last November.
Sí, definitivamente, Darcy, porque existe ese periodo de luna de miel que tienen los electores con el presidente. En algunos casos dura meses, en este caso ya hemos pasado un año. Cuando fue elegido Biden había mucha preocupación por lo que podría pasar con Donald Trump. Recordamos que Joe Biden fue el presidente con la mayor cantidad de votos, le ganó por 8 millones de votos a Donald Trump, ganó en estados como Arizona o Georgia, estados que históricamente habían sido dominados por los republicanos. Su idea cuando ganó era unificar al país, tenía una agenda clara y empezó con una tasa de con aprobación de un 60%, casi un 60%, que en tiempos de división era muy difícil. La realidad es que en el último tiempo no le ha ido tan bien. Las encuestas en un promedio muestran que está por debajo del 40% de aprobación y su aprobación ha bajado sistemáticamente, pero no podemos olvidar que estamos en una pandemia en la que hemos estado por 2 años, que hay muchas variantes, que hay por lo menos 1 millón de casos por día. No podemos obviar tampoco lo que ha generado esto a nivel económico, la inflación. Pero bueno, lo bueno es que por un par de meses, por varios meses, no va a haber elecciones y todo puede cambiar, porque él todavía puede dar vuelta a la situación, puede hacer determinadas reformas, puede hacer determinados cambios en la agenda y hay suficiente tiempo para que cuando lleguemos a elecciones las cosas hayan cambiado.
Buenos días. Yo quiero preguntarle por Rusia. Ayer fue inusualmente dura la advertencia de Biden. ¿Será un desastre para Rusia si Putin decide invadir Ucrania? ¿Qué hay detrás de esa dureza? Es una advertencia a Putin, pero también un mensaje para la política interior de Estados Unidos para que lo vean fuerte en contraste con lo que pasó en Afganistán. ¿Qué va a pasar en ese tema de Rusia?
Professor Kall, yesterday we saw President Biden being very strong against the current position of Russia against Ukraine. Do you feel that President Biden's stand against Russia and Putin is something more for the local market, something more for the local politics, instead of something that really shows America's position in the global stand? What's your interpretation of what happened yesterday?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a little bit controversial, clearly because the press conference was almost 2 hours in duration. He was going to get, you got dozens of questions over a wide range of issues, but certainly, people are concerned about Russia's actions towards Ukraine at this time, given his history and also the fact that the, Winter Olympics are coming up and that he's got a history of, making these kind of geopolitical moves surrounding such major events. But here, in the United States, I think that was seen as one of the weaker points of the press conference, just because initially when he was asked the question, he seemed kind of almost resolved, or it being inevitable that Russia was going to take action against Ukraine, and people are kind of accusing him then of sending a green light, saying that it would be okay if that happened, and that's not kind of the position you want to take over such an important issue. Later in the press conference, he was asked another question about it, and had the opportunity a little bit to clean up his first answer, but didn't do a great job and stumbled a little bit about it, a little bit surrounding it. So people are a little concerned, kind of what signal it sends. Just the issue is there are not a lot of great answers. It doesn't seem like his administration is willing to use military action or go to war over something like this if Putin were to take action in Ukraine. He talked about just kind of the severity of the response the United States would take, but that mainly happens to exist in the realm of economic issues, sanctions, and trying to work with the rest of the world, including Europe, to take an economic penalty against the Russian economy, but not commit military troops or assets if something like that were going to occur. He did mention, kind of the international response to this is a little bit lacking, and that they needed, especially with countries of the NATO organization, to have a more unified response in order to a potential incursion of Russia into Ukraine. And there's just a lot of controversy kind of surrounding that. There's been a lot of issues with this Nord Stream pipeline in Russia as well, and there's not a kind of agreement over that. There was just that came up in Congress with Ted Cruz. There was a vote on that recently failed even in the United States. And so, while the speech mostly focused on domestic issues and the economy and things like that, clearly this is one of the issues at the forefront internationally, geopolitical tensions that is occurring and may kind of come to a head in the next several weeks. And so probably wasn't his strongest point of the press conference. And you saw his press secretary kind of came out with a statement shortly after, which shows that, that he clearly wasn't being as clear as he hoped during it. And so, but we'll see. There'll probably be a resolution of that in the next several weeks. But that's kind of an issue. If that occurs, international tension, that's something that the country could rally around. And the domestic political tensions that exist anytime there's this external action, and the United States is faced with an adversary. That's something where the country could come together and kind of rally around the flag, and so it could potentially be beneficial for him politically, assuming it doesn't, kind of spiral out of control.
El tema Rusia-Ucrania fue un momento bastante controversial de la conferencia de prensa. Fueron 2 horas, se pudo hacer preguntas. Y con el tema Rusia-Ucrania, la realidad es que la gente quedó preocupada por los movimientos geopolíticos que se pueden hacer al respecto. En cuanto a la percepción que hubo en Estados Unidos, se vio como uno de los puntos más débiles de la conferencia. Parecía de alguna manera, cuando él hablaba, que estaba resuelto o que estaba claro que Rusia se iba a meter en Ucrania, y de alguna manera la gente interpretó que Biden le estaba dando como una luz verde a que eso sucediera. Esto es a raíz de la primera respuesta que dio. Pero después le preguntaron algo más y pudo limpiar o aclarar un poco de lo que dijo en su primera respuesta, pero no le fue bien. La gente quedó preocupada y aún no está muy clara cuál es la política que tiene Estados Unidos o la administración Biden con respecto al conflicto entre Rusia y Ucrania. Se habló de respuesta severa. Hablamos de penalizar la economía, no quedó claro que se harían con un tema militar, y además habló acerca de la respuesta internacional. Dijo que la comunidad internacional no está siendo suficiente, pero que había que trabajar de manera unificada. La falta de claridad en las respuestas de Biden se vio un poco aclarada, valga la redundancia, cuando desde la Secretaría de Prensa se lanzó un comunicado justo después de las palabras del presidente. Pero es un tema controversial, es un tema difícil, es un tema que tiene bastante preocupada a la gente.
Son las 7 de la mañana, 57 minutos. Al profesor Kall, muchas gracias por darnos unos minutos aquí en la FM. Professor Kall, thank you so much for having the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Hope to talk to you next around President Biden's State of the Union address in March. Take care.